In the NBA, injuries have been part of the game since the creation of the sport, and it wasn't different in the recent playoffs. In today's video, we will look at some of the injuries that affected players throughout their playoff run, and how it affected their respective teams. To start off in round 1, on the Eastern Conference side, the Miami Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks faced off, and one star player from each side went out in Game 1. Giannis hurt his back and only managed to play 3 out of the 5 games that series, while Tyler Hero broke his hand in Game 1 and was out till Game 5 of the NBA Finals, where he did not play. And also in Game 3, Victor Oladipo went out with a knee injury that would cost him the rest of the season. For the New York and Cleveland series, the only notable injury was that Julius Randle came into that series with an ankle injury, so he had to leave early in Game 5 because he aggravated that injury. And during the 76ers and Nets series, Embiid missed Game 4 with a knee injury, but that was about it for that series, and the 76ers still managed to sweep them. And the final series in the Eastern Conference was the Hawks versus the Celtics, and Jaylen Brown came into that series with a hand injury and wearing a mask because of prior injuries. Now for the Western Conference, the Nuggets and Timberwolves were unbothered by injuries, but the same could not be said for the Suns and Clippers series, with Paul George completely missing this series. Also, Kawhi had a sore knee after Game 1, which later on we ended up learning that it was a torn meniscus, causing him to miss Game 3, 4, and 5, and costing them this series. Now for the Kings and Warriors, De'Aaron Fox broke his index finger in Game 4, leading him to play on a bad shooting hand for the final 3 games of that round, which also impacted his play. And the final one was the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Los Angeles Lakers. And before the playoffs started, we learned that Brandon Clark and Steven Adams were both out for this season with injuries. We also knew that LeBron came into that series with a bad foot due to a prior injury. And in that series, Ja injured his hand in Game 1 on another charge attempt, which was a similar play to the one Giannis got hurt. And this caused him to miss Game 2. And also, we could see throughout the rest of that round that his hand was bothering him at times despite the way he played. And finally, Luke Kennard injured his shoulder in Game 5, which forced him to miss the final game of that series, which was Game 6. So in total in round 1, we could consider that there were close to 10 injuries that were caused in that single round, which is quite a lot. And for some teams, it did impact their chances of winning. For example, the Milwaukee Bucks lost to Miami, but with a healthy Giannis throughout the whole series, the outcome could have been different for them. And the same could be said for De'Aaron Fox's injury against the Warriors. But for other team, it did not bother them. The example is the Sixers sweeping the Nets despite Embiid missing Game 4. In round 2, it was more of the same. Key players got injured, and it played a part as to whether their team had a chance to win or not. In the Eastern Conference, Miami faced off against the New York Knicks, and Jimmy Butler had a big ankle injury at the end of Game 1, where it bothered him throughout the rest of that game, and even forced him to miss Game 2. Meanwhile, on the Knicks side, Julius Randle missed Game 1, and in Game 2, Max Strus had to leave the game early with back pain. In Game 3, Emmanuel quickly sprained his ankle, which forced him to miss Game 4, 5, and 6, depriving the Knicks of their best bench player. For the Sixers and Celtics series, Embiid missed Game 1 with the same knee injury that kept him out in Game 4 versus the Nets, despite a somewhat long break in between those rounds. Now, on the Western Conference side, the Lakers faced off against the reigning champs in the Golden State Warriors, and Kevon Looney had to miss Game 2 with an illness, with a non-COVID related illness, and he had been one of their important piece in round 1, and they had hoped that he could also be a key contributor in round 2, but they were left without him for that game. And in Game 5, AD had a head injury that people thought was a concussion by the way he reacted and was stumbling afterwards. So he had to leave that game. but he still managed to play game 6. And the final series for the conference semifinals was the Nuggets versus the Suns. And Chris Paul went out for that series with a with an injury in game 2. Meanwhile, DeAndre Ayton missed the decisive game 6. Now for the conference finals, in the Lakers versus Nuggets series, no one truly got injured that we could see and that was impactful enough to make the outcome of that round questionable. But on the Eastern Conference side, in Game 3, Kevin Love, who had played great, went out and did not come back for that game. While in Game 4, Gabe Vincent had to leave with a twisted ankle, and it forced him to miss Game 5. And Malcolm Brogdon had to miss Game 6. Now during the NBA Finals, no one got an injury that forced them to leave the game early or miss out on some time. But with the way Jimmy Butler's game had slowly decreased since his ankle injury, there were rumors that it was still affecting him, but he still managed to play through it and did not want to make excuses, so it's something I cannot consider as an injury for that round. And so that was it for the NBA playoff this season. And if you've closely paid attention to the video, you can see that I did not mention any of the Denver Nuggets player getting injured. And this is not to take away from their championship run whatsoever. It has been repeated throughout the years. Sometimes the deciding factor as to whether or not a team wins the championship in the playoff is often health. And we've seen it with the Denver Nuggets this season. They were clearly the best team this season throughout the regular season and throughout the playoff. But as we saw with Milwaukee, one injury can ruin your whole playoff aspiration pretty quickly. Despite the season being over, I'll try to keep making videos this summer regarding the NBA and basketball in general. So if you don't want to miss any of that content, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment on what future videos you want to see. And until next time, have a great one.